And I start all my classes by saying, welcome yet to another fabulous class here at the Audacious Spirit. So you have made it, you've gone through enrollments, and here we go. At the risk of sounding like PT Barnum, I know Zoom classes can get a little boring, so I'm going to try and mix it up. But this isn't going to be boring because what we're doing is you're going to learn tools, as I've explained to you, that combine into a meditation practice. And that's the very place we begin, right there, because these tools are the foundation of energy work. And this school is committed to doing energy work. So energy work is a very broad term. It's more acceptable. You hear about it now. You know, when I was learning and training, that was like a very woo-woo thing. Nobody ever knew. Even the word grounding was kind of new to the culture. And I think it's kind of cool that the word grounding has become popularized in the past 50 years. And I'm pretty sure our lineage is responsible for that. But no, I said our lineage, and I'm going to talk about that. Yeah, because our lineage began, one aspect of our lineage is the Berkeley Psychic Institute. That's where I received my training in this particular method. Now, of course, I've come from all kinds of things, as we all have. You know, I was born in Western Pennsylvania into a blue-collar town, a little town called Liberty Borough. How's that sound? How's that for America? And Western Pennsylvania was all about steel making and football. Basically, that's it. And so I really didn't want to make steel and not into football, kind of a different, more feminine young boy. I had my feelers. There was a lot more going on. I had my feelers out there into the world in different ways than people that, you know, really were into football and steel. But anyway, Western PA, blue collar neighborhood, that's where I grew up. My first spiritual experiences that were attributable to others were from the Catholic Church. And I was raised in that church. And, you know, it was a big deal for my mom and dad, who were, you know, children of the 50s. And they, I shouldn't say children, they were adults of the 50s. They were children of the 1930s and 40s. But, you know, they raised a family, and, you know, we used to have to get dressed up to go to church. And my dad had a little Bell and Howell camera, and he used to film us getting into the car, stuff like that. So it was like showtime going to church. And I did learn to love church, to be honest. I loved going to our church. I thought it was a very special, fun day. And I love the idea of Jesus and Mary and God and all that stuff we learned about. And to me, I'm like, well, this is it. This is the most important thing in the world. Why would we care about adding, subtracting, and telling time? Because indeed, when third grade rolled around, I did not want to learn how to tell time. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'll just ask somebody. Why do I got to learn that? It's too hard. But but I did learn to tell time eventually, so I'm somewhat grateful for that aspect of my education too. But lineage is for me blue collar, Catholic, and later atheism. And you might think, well, how'd that happen? Well, I'm going to get into that because I want you guys to know who your teacher is. So sometimes I have a little bit of I have this idea that maybe sharing this story early on is a bit hard on my students, because really we're here to gather and learn about each other. And I think what I'm going to do is, rather than me launch into who I am, I'm going to check in with you guys first. Oh, and perfect timing. We have Owl, and he likes to be called Owl, so we can call him that. Okay. And where is he? He's connecting on his phone.
I actually have owls all over my shirt, so
oh,
I'm wearing a shirt
yeah.
of owls this morning.
You are honoring Owl.
I'm
Let's give
honoring
him a
Owl.
sec. His connection probably isn't very strong. I'm staying out at the Oregon coast myself. And there he is.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Look at you.
I'm doing well. I'm sleeping in a cemetery.
It's a little
That's
early.
awesome.
Oh, yeah. But okay.
Hi,
Okay.
Owl. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi.
I'm
Well,
Robin.
Nice to meet
I
you.
was just about to start introductions. Thank you, Robin, for getting there, getting us going. But yeah, I'm going to tell you a bit more about who I am as your teacher, and I'm going to go into like probably painful detail and shocking detail in terms of some of the things that happened in my life that brought me to sitting here in front of you. But let's talk about you, because we're all going to be in this together for 4 to 5 months. And this isn't just like, teacher talks, you listen, take notes, and do what I say. It's not an academic class. We are participating in this together. It's something we want to do together. And I want to just say, there's very few rules. This is a psychic kindergarten, literally. And I didn't just make that up. That's a real thing that we set the energy to have when we have class, when we do everything. And I expect you to learn psychic kindergarten. I want you to carry it around in your head and in your heart. Because when are you ever a master of spirituality? I don't care if you're floating in a cloud above the masses, there's still more for you to go. You're still going to be in that kindergarten vibration. What a weird example. I'm sorry that floated in my head. um, Psychic kindergarten is simple. It means here you have permission to make mistakes. I'm not going to like hold you accountable to, spiritual forces that we're barely getting to know. um it is fun. You get to have fun here. I want you to laugh. One of the most powerful tools, it is definitely a tool you're going to learn here, is amusement. And you're like, amusement isn't a tool? Well, it's free. I didn't have to pay to learn amusement. Yes, you did. Why? Because we'll teach you how to implement it, how to create amusement out of thin air, and why you may want to do that. And you're going to want to do that because a lot of what we do here in terms of energy work, and I keep putting an emphasis on the word energy because we're going to talk a bit about what is energy and what do I mean energy work and all that. But definitely get with the groove. Psychic kindergarten, we're having fun. Permission to make mistakes. The only rules are that you not show up like so drunk or high you can't do anything, and please try not to use any drugs when you're in class. And be nice to each other like you're asked to do in kindergarten. And I've never had to enforce any of these rules. People have always been super cool coming to class, and that's really it. So Psychic Kindergarten, welcome everybody. This is day 1 in Psychic Kindergarten. And I would like to introduce folks as they have arrived into the classroom. And first, we have the lovely Wally Hedleski from beautiful sunny Virginia. Wally, why don't you just go ahead and tell us what made you interested in this class? Why did you want to come? And tell us a little bit about your history, your spiritual history, your belief systems, how they've evolved.
Okay. Well, I learned about this clairvoyancy healing from my daughter, who just completed the program with Richard.
Yeah.
And she was so excited about, all that she was doing and learning. And I sat, would kind of sit in on a couple of her classes and stuff. And she actually gifted me this program. She thinks so highly of this.
Wow.
Yeah, my journey started when I was really, really young. I sort of rejected organized religion at a very young age, having gone to different churches with my mother and experienced Presbyterian and the Catholic Church system. I found it traumatic, and at about 13 or 14 years old, I realized that I couldn't abide by any of it, be honest with you. So I
Wow.
left a Bible group armed only with the Beatitudes in my head, and that was about it. And I kind of grew up kind of feral and wild. I was always in nature and very much attuned to the natural world around me. And I guess before I even knew there was a word for it, the animist or animism, I sort of prescribed to that general spirituality, and I've always carried that sort of connection with the natural world with me everywhere I went through high school and a college education. And raising my kids and being here on the farm. I didn't view anything as unsurmountable as far as learning how to live comfortably with very little.
Mm.
And just asking, pretty much asking the farm here and the land here to help me survive this, raising 3 kids by myself, not really knowing how to handle expressing my spiritualism to the people around me. I never shared it much because it wasn't something that was that I got a lot of positive feedback from, when I would talk about how I felt about the natural world and how I felt like sort of my concept of what's enough, I think, is what I've carried through my whole lifetime is never feeling like I needed to have too much or care about what other people thought about me or whether or not my kids had all the best and finest. I did put them all through college, which I thought was important,
Wow,
but
amazing.
and giving them educations, but I never, they were raised here on the farm, wearing secondhand clothes and scraping by. I was a silversmith in a mall, kind of hand to mouth kind of survival that I don't know. I just never felt like I needed to exploit anything around me. I felt like I just work with things, and somehow or another, I was always provided for.
Yeah,
Always. I've had
beautiful.
some really, really bizarre things happen that are unexplainable to me that I feel only can be explained by some sort of energy connection.
Yeah.
Going through a divorce and being on the point of bankruptcy and all of a sudden just having a lot of money dropped in my lap, just enough almost to the dollar to get me out of debt. Every time I've needed or wanted things, I've always, I had an experience in, while traveling with Wynn, actually, as she was a little baby. I was visiting a fellow silversmith on a trip to the Southwest, and he took me to a little native community, and we went out in the middle of this field and did sort of a ceremony to the full moon the night before the full moon. And apparently it was just to ask for your wealth, and it was just a money thing. It had, it wasn't anything formal or anything. And I've done that almost every full moon my entire life for almost 25 years, and I have never wanted for anything. And that seems
Okay,
really weird, but it's just,
Wally,
it's just
you're gonna have
I
to
really
teach a
have.
workshop on this ritual after class because I
I don't
think
even,
we all
it's
would
just
like
something I
that.
do, and if someone's around, I'll always grab my kids or whoever's around and say, hey, let's go out. And it's a Kiowa Indian sort of
Yeah,
tradition. And
yeah.
we would literally, we all just grabbed hands and we went out and we just, put ourselves in front of the moon, who was almost full apparently and receptive. And you just, so I've always felt sort of a connection with the moon and these sort of things. And I don't know, it made a profound impact on my life, and how I view things and take care of my kids. I just never, yeah, I just never have worried about care and money and stuff. It just seems to always come with just enough, not much extra to do anything fantastic with and all, but just enough, to be
I have to
comfortable. And
say, Wally, that is truly an example of a shamanic path, which is what you said is kind of the basis of your beliefs. You called it animism, right?
yeah, it's like I just feel like I genuinely feel like every single natural thing that surrounds me, even in my kitchen here, everything that's made of metal, everything that's made of stone, everything that's of a natural origin has some sort of an entity and a spirit to me. It genuinely does. I feel
Yeah.
it. I feel
Good.
it and I respect it. And the things that I purchase that I take very good care of, because it's not that they cost me money. It's just because they were formed into this special thing that was designed just to help me make my life more
Because
comfortable. And
you
isn't
have a
that just a very beautiful
relationship.
gift?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have a
it's
different
important.
relationship with reality because of how you perceive reality to be made and how you're made. Beautiful. Yeah, Tony Bennett, just an ode to San Francisco here. He used to say, life teaches you everything you need to know if you just let it. And that, he was asked about his spirituality, and that was his answer. It was like, I really don't need to kind of do a specific thing or do this or that or the other. He's like, just be open to life itself. And it sounds like, in at least very baseline, that's something of what you're doing, and that's the philosophy you've adapted. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all that. You could actually teach the very first class here today, because we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Everything is made of energy. That'll be the very first thing out of my mouth. It's officially a teaching. And then we'll talk about, well, what is energy? And we'll go from there. But I want to continue on the introductions. Thank you so much, Wally. That was awesome.
You're very welcome.
And let's see who came in next. I think we had Robin. Yeah. So Robin, go ahead, unmute your microphone and introduce yourself, and pour us a hot steaming cup of Robin Alexander and let us know what drew you to this class. What's up?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin, and I have always been very kind of out there a little bit, I feel like, since I was younger. Kind of maybe feeling I was the black sheep of the family, just very similar to some of the things that Wally shared with us about always wanting to be out in nature and just in the astrological world. I am a Taurus, so it's very important I connect to the earth and grounding and nature and all of that. My birthday is May 11th, so the number 11 is very significant to me and for me, and I see 11 all of the time. So I just always felt drawn to, there's something more out there besides just conventional, dogma life, so to speak. I'm a recovering Catholic. I don't really believe in organized religion. I had religion shoved down my throat growing up outside of New York City, and it's not something that's for me. So I just always felt I was more drawn to mysticism, if you will, or just other ways or beings, or that there's just higher power out there that doesn't need to be coming from a priest or a pope telling me where to give all my money, so to speak. So that's a little bit about my background. I grew up very poor. I fled New York when I was graduated high school, and so I've been in California ever since, and I do love the West Coast. And I would say for me, the moon is very important. In the human design world, I'm a projector. That's only 21% of the population. For those who don't know about human design, it's more mechanical and not spiritual, but it is a way to understand your body and your DNA and why we are maybe certain ways that are kind of hard to explain. So I highly recommend looking into that for those who may be interested. But as a projector, I do take on other people's auras and energies, and just kind of want to learn and be better about not absorbing it all, or being smart about where I place my energy and how I use my own energy, if that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
a whole nother topic to talk about for another day offline. But anyhow, and then also, what can I tell you about me? Just very intuitive, but want to hone my intuition more. I tend to be a little bit impatient, so I want to work more on meditating and having more meaningful meditations that take me to a higher frequency. And so I'm vibrating at a higher level permanently, and not just when I do maybe a 20-minute, 30-minute meditation, and that's it. I've recently been working more with crystals. I do want to utilize crystals more for healing and just kind of raising my vibration in general. I'm currently in a spiritual training program to become a spiritual coach, but I'm not doing it to become a coach. I'm actually doing it for my own spiritual journey and just, like I said, opening myself up to more connection with the universe, connecting to my spirit guides, angels, whatever Richard has to offer us. And I found out about this because I recently did a reading with someone that is it with audacious spirit. And so that's how I kind of found out about Richard and his course. And so I'm just very excited to be here. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was awesome too. Yeah, the world is a spiritual marketplace, and there's so much out there that we could tap into. I'm really glad you guys have chosen the audacious spirit, because to me, we're very flexible. You can everything we teach is going to adapt to anything that you do. And I don't have a religion or a religious prescription for anybody in terms of what to believe. Beliefs evolve constantly from every second of your life. You're really working on that, and you're gonna I'm going to share my perspective obviously on things, but it is a level playing field at this school. I want to make that very clear what that is, because it's unusual. Even within our lineage, it's practically solitary. The level playing field means that, to me, spirituality, true spirituality and hierarchy, they don't mix. This is where you get the problems of religion. You get somebody that's up here and you're down here, and you're going to listen to that person like they have better or more information than you, and they're better than you somehow, and it just does not work, because everybody has the same mandate on this planet, the same purpose and reason and everything. Ultimately, there is nothing, nobody, nothing in this entire universe is bigger than you. There isn't a god that's been thought up, a devil that's been invented, nothing. You are the focal point. You are the reason that everything else exists. And boy, does that sound, grandiose. Well, it's really not, And how do we understand that? How do we create a context for that? Well, it's simple. The practice is simple. We don't create gurus for each other to play these roles, And again, I don't want to talk shit on other systems, because I came up through Catholicism. I came up through a guru-like system. Even the church that, was underneath the lineage that I'm teaching from was a Christian church, a church of Christian mysticism, but it was manufactured by the creator. He chose Christianity on purpose to cast a broader net so he could teach these tools to more people when he created this. And, subsequently, the people that took over the institution after really liked the Christian hierarchy and then built this kind of hierarchical structure within. It was called the Church of Divine Man. And to me, it was hypocritical. So I left it and started this, my own place on the level playing field. But I just wanted to give you that little tidbit of kind of where I'm coming from. Yeah, I'm your teacher, but rest assured, you're my teachers too, every one of you. And I don't see you like, oh, you don't know shit and I know everything. It's never going to be like that, ever, not for 1 minute that we're talking. Of course, I'm your teacher. I'm going to teach you what I know and the skills and the art form that is this spiritual practice, if you ask me. But you're going to teach me like you already have. Sharing your life story. You've already given me deep insight into kind of how you've evolved your life from, early to now. And that's an education for me, because I use that information, not just specifically for you, but to understand the world at large, to understand trends and how people grow from this stimuli or that event and blah, 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 and how life produces these things. So to me, that's my educational material. So you're definitely being my teachers. Thank you. Let's go on. We have Oscar Campos from beautiful sunny Portland, Oregon. Oscar, why don't you go ahead and unmute and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi there. Yes, Oscar Campos. I'm an educator currently, but I've had many lives from different fields, different careers, and yeah, literally different fields and careers. So I've bounced around a little bit. And right now, just recently within the last 2 years, I left like a long relationship too of like 23 years, and that kind of jump-started me.
23 years?
Yeah, 23
Oh.
years, from 18 to 41. So I'm
Mm.
43 now, so 2 years removed from it. And um, I was, kind of going back to my past and my family, like, well, I'm one of nine as well. And I was the first one to leave the house, kind of like there's other kids, other siblings that went to college, two other ones. But I'm, I wouldn't say the black sheep, but just the one that is out there experimenting and traveling and getting to know the world.
Yeah.
And that was me and still is me, but definitely lost myself a little bit within the relationship the last few years of codependency and just catering to other people's needs, really.
Mm.
And now just trying to take a little bit of ownership and kind of forced to being single now, and raising two boys, two middle schoolers, a sixth and an eighth grader, 1 week on, 1 week off. But within that time frame, there's just been a lot of growth within the last 5 years of seeking knowledge. And kind of somebody touched on like astrology, and I'm like a Taurus sun, Taurus moon, Sagittarius rising.
Well,
And
you have a whole room full of Taurus.
yeah,
Oh
what
my,
started
I'm
for
in
me was
trouble.
working
You
with
are.
a shaman in
There's the
Mexico.
rules.
And that's what started for me, working with this person, doing a toad ceremony is what it was, from northern Mexico. And I worked with
Oh,
him, and
gotcha.
that's what started everything for me. Just in part of that work was just investing in myself, similar to here, right? Like it's like I wasn't expecting to be in a place to go on a spiritual journey and wanting to seek more from that. And started with that. Then I did even like a Mayan stone ceremony, a reading, and then talking to a medium, talking to an astrologer, talking to or learning about the Enneagram, and reading books, Brene Brown, Eckhart Tolle, Thich Nhat Hanh, and again, just trying to seek knowledge. And it is interesting that they all kind of get back to it's all within you, right? Like, and it's true.
Mm-hmm.
But I need that validation, or just that remembering from other people to be like, okay, you're on the, like, they're all saying the same thing, and the path is there. I just need to do it. And similar
Beautiful.
with Richard, with Audacious Spirit, getting a reading and talking to him, and just kind of taking what life gives me when it's in the sense of like, hey, um, you need some grounding exercises. I'm like, what the heck is grounding? Like, why do people keep talking about that? What is that? And trying to see how I could hone my skills and my abilities, first of all, to focus on myself and just get that centering myself, um, to be able to, eventually, I don't know how far I'll take this, but eventually to help people, um,
Hmm.
is the goal. But first I have to help myself, and that's why I'm here.
Couldn't have said it better. You guys are practically teaching yourselves the very first class, the contents. It's great. Yeah, like it says on the airplane, before you could help someone else put on their oxygen mask, you got to put yours on first, or you're you're no good to anyone. So absolutely, yeah, this is definitely about you, this class. Everybody, hear that. Yeah, you will eventually go within. Another powerful point you just made. You said the teachers that you've come across, the readers, the healers, they all kind of point you back to you, don't they? And well, how do you do that? How do you go within yourself to like get answers and to find your purpose, and all the things people go to psychics for readings for? Really, you're going to need to learn to answer those questions for yourself and become familiar with your own answers. And your answers will change. They will always change. They'll evolve just like you evolve. So what you're learning in this class is a way to go within, literally, and find your own answers. And not just answers, but you're going to find other aspects of your being, some of which I may not know about, some of which I probably do know about, and hopefully I'll be able to guide you to develop those aspects of yourself as well. So a lot comes from kindergarten, an awful lot. Albert Einstein had to go to kindergarten before he could do his Einstein thing, so you're still, and the thing about what I really like about Einstein is I just pulled him out. You got to know him as an old man and an established scientist. He was so childlike. He had this very childlike sense of himself and the universe. And when he pondered the greatest questions there is, he always came down to like this little kid point of view about, it's probably easier than that, And again, another aspect of the spiritual kindergarten, the psychic kindergarten that you're in, it's going to give you that vantage point, that ability to kind of both be part of something and separate enough from it and childlike enough from it that you'll be able to see it without bias. You'll be able to kind of see the reality as it is through a clear lens, not through your judgments or your fears and stuff like that. That's why we go within, mainly to clear the obstacles to clarity. And clarity, you're here basically in a beginner clairvoyant training program. Clairvoyant it's a French word. It comes from, I think, Madame Blavatsky, who was kind of one of the early 20th century kind of creators of a system called Theosophy. She created these words. But clairvoyant just means clear seeing, clarity with vision. Clairaudient, another spiritual ability. Everything your physical body can do, your spirit can do. Your body is a kind of tool that mimics your spiritual abilities, to the extent that they work here, on Earth in the three-dimensional realm. And, we're tossing around words like frequency and vibration and things like that. And I want you guys to get really intimate with what those things are to you. They're valid words. They're useful. When I think about my own kind of evolution in this practice, I remember my one teacher, because when I first started to read, I would see entities in people's space and they're like, well, what is it? And the kind of training we have it was very militant. So they gave you nothing, you had to sit there and squirm until you knew what that was. And there's a way, it's good in a way. And I'd be like, that is an interdimensional entity. And they're like, well, what's that? I'm like, I don't know, but I know that's what it is. So you have this other ability called knowingness. And that's hard for people to grasp. That's the one that makes people say, oh, psychics are crackpots, because there's no method, there's no process, there's no science to knowing something like that. And the spiritual ability of knowingness is simply to be still and know. That's how we define it. Very kindergarten. Be still means no effort. You just know. And sure, it's easy to fake that, but when you're sitting in front of somebody and you're doing this practice, you don't want to lie to them. You don't want to give them bad information, so you really squirm to vet. How do I know this stuff? And there's this process that evolves when you learn to do clairvoyant readings, that eventually the part of you, the rational mind that has to be satisfied that what you're saying is accurate at all, it tends to come with repetition. Like, okay, I'm reading this person today and I see that, interdimensional entities. And I'm like, well, what are they doing? Well, they're harvesting energy. How do you know? Because it looks like they're scooping eggs out of their head. What? okay, blah. And you're like, "Ah," and then you feel terrible and you're worried that you warped somebody's mind by saying that. They'll call you the next day and you're going, whatever you did, I'm not having the bad dreams anymore. They stopped and blah, blah, blah. So you get a little validation. Okay, maybe there's something to this. So I just want you to know where you're at, psychic kindergarten. I'm still in psychic kindergarten. I have more miles under the belt in terms of doing readings and healings and seeing through the lens of clairvoyance. And so that's genuine wisdom I'm anxious to share with you guys. And but you're gonna have to do it yourself too. And basically, when I first went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute, I was a very bitter ex-Catholic. And I was like, I will never be the dupe of a religion ever again. But there was something about this place, the creed of it was all about spiritual freedom. And I'm like, well, that's a concept, because to me, spirituality was just kind of a prison for most people. And so the spiritual freedom thing was, and it was beautifully stated in the mission of the school, spiritual freedom means that you have many, many lifetimes to do whatever the fuck you're going to do. So don't freak out. Your true nature is immortal. This part of you comes and goes, and you have many, many, many versions of your spirit coming and embodying and becoming things. And so the creed of the Church of Divine Man, which was their Christian mystical church, said, no isms. We don't want you to get involved in causes or things like that, at least when you're during your spiritual practice, because you're creating biases. You're creating a kind of lens that isn't clear to see things through. Now, it's not wrong to do that, but as a creed, as a kind of guidance for your belief, you want to avoid it, because you want to be able to have the clearest view or picture of something that you can. So there's so many things in the creed. We'll go over that later, but I want to just share with you kind of a little tidbit of how this journey works. And Oscar, you brought up some great stuff here. You got to kind of see it for yourself. You got to do it for yourself, because I'm not here teaching you a dogma. I'm teaching you a practice. And from this practice, you're going to be bringing up things that are usually answered by dogma and religion. So you're going to feel pressure to answer to Catholics, answer to, maybe your former, oppressors of your thought and your feelings and stuff. So it's all good. Whatever comes out of this, we got your back. But thank you, Oscar. Let's check in with Owl. Owl, why don't you go ahead, unmute your microphone. Tell us something about yourself. What drew you to this course? Where are you at with your spiritual evolution?
Yeah. Let me introduce you to Andromeda too.
Oh, hey, look at
Hi.
that dog.
This is Andy.
He knows he's on camera.
Yeah. So I grew up in a very Christian family.
Hmm?
My my father still is a leader in the church, kind of a non-denominational church. And it's not like a specific hierarchy of this person is the minister, this person is in charge. Everyone kind of takes turns. We had a lot of house meetings. We had a lot of community. And my father was the one stepping up to baptize people and leading a lot of these. And I kind of, watched and followed in his footsteps of that charisma that I witnessed and that spiritual depth. Later in life, especially around middle school, high school, I started to just step back from that and just realize that the lifestyle and the dogma really wasn't my own. I think there was a lot of joy that I got from it, and there was a lot of powerful spiritual connection that I did see at times, but there was also this level of just kind of following along without really knowing for myself. And I kind of distanced myself. I would like put a hand up against that, against Christianity for a while. Many years later, as I'm like just delving so much into other religions, I was really interested in learning about Taoism and Buddhism and, you know, Tibetan culture and Hinduism a little bit, and just like keeping a really open mind, not necessarily following anything, but really wanting to learn. And I would meet people from other religions and just like really tune in, like tell me like what is the wisdom, what is the greatest lesson that you have from your religion, and just to soak it up and have respect for it. And the more that I learned, the less resistant I got to Christianity. And I just kind of took it as like the reality that every organized religion has beautiful foundational core and a huge mountain of human inspired power or human inspired ritual that makes them feel good or helps maybe some masters get to that level. But for the masses, it's just, you know, the holidays and the culture, the religious culture that is built into that. And you know, I don't have so much animosity towards it. It's just kind of an awareness, and just let them be, and don't be. I'm trying not to be as judgmental about where people are in that. Yeah, I'm just trying to keep an open mind with everything. My own journey since then has really been this life built on subtle ritual. Like the way that I design my room, the way that I put my altar, the way that I connect with nature when I'm by myself and like truly just truly uninhibited by any expectations when no one is looking. I connect deeply to nature. I connect deeply to myself. And it's given me a lot of like confidence in my own intuition, and I just trust it. I just like go with it wherever. Like I'm in a cemetery right now, and I felt like my energy opening up, and I was just like walking and meandering, and I felt this really strong connection to a certain spot, and I closed my eyes and like put my hand on the tombstone, and I had this big awareness, and then I looked around, and the name on the tombstone was Chase, and instantly it was like it was a lesson about me like chasing after what I can't really have. And like it was just little things
That's
where
awesome.
I just kind of go with the flow without any sort of formality or training. And I want to like take this more seriously. I want to really see where it goes and see, you know, the power of manifestation that I believe in, the power of setting my intention, of being clear about what I want. This matters especially now because I know my power. I know all of our power is what I mean to say. But also just where I'm at in life. I've had like extremely heartbreak earlier this year, and I was like ripped from my home that I thought was settled, and they it's a long story, but my foundation was shaken. And then on Tuesday was the last day of my job, which was the reason I moved out to Bend. And so like all of these things it's easy to say like, oh, they're happening to me, and then my wise friends are like, no, these are happening for you. Like, this is, whether you realize it or not, you have energetically asked for it. And so I'm on the coast, sleeping in a cemetery, slowly going to make my way east to Minnesota to see my family. And I have nothing planned after that. I have a small amount of savings to barely get me by for a little while. And I'm like teetering on this next chapter with a whole world of possibilities. And I'm on the edge of making my decision. And I can't imagine better timing for this course to like know my, yeah.
I can't either. That's amazing. Again, you're all bringing up such excellent points for our first gathering. One thing, first of all, congratulations. You know, I agree with your friends. You know, it's difficult, especially when you're suffering something, you know, and it doesn't feel so good you lose a job or be torn out of a relationship or lose your home. You know, it's a terrible feeling. It goes right to your senses of survival, you know, and yet you brought up two things amidst all this survival drama. You talked about touching a tombstone and getting a message energetically, you know, the name Chase, and there was relevancy to you. What am I chasing after? What have I been chasing after? And it kind of took you to a place within of self-examination. That's exactly what tools do. You know, what clairvoyance is for, what intuition is, you know, it's a guiding force. You know, some people say, well, where does it come from? It comes from that knowingness, that being still and knowing. But that's one ability. It also comes from the heart. And thank you for bringing that up. Only because I want to make a bit of a distinction. Typically, schools of this nature are very militant about being in your sixth chakra. And part of the training is indeed militancy about your sixth chakra. Because as you become aware of your awareness, you're going to start to be able to map it. Where's it going? Where's it coming from? Am I coming from up here, or am I coming from down here, from down below? And that may sound like a cliche, but it's not. It's a significant, specific thing, because this knowingness thing is a very high vibration. It sits on top of your head in what's called your crown chakra. But really, all parts of you are sensory, and information is processed into knowledge. So you have knowingness in your feeling spaces too. You have knowingness in your sensory spaces. So what is the thing in the heart, though? You know, this school is a six chakra school, but we're also a four chakra school. We're a shamanic school, because as Wally was talking about, it's really about your relationships with reality, with everything in it, you know, down to molecular level, you know, not just groups of people, but there's plants, there's animals, there's substances that all participate in this life. So how are you going to relate to all those things? And where that information sits is in the heart. The heart is about relatedness, quite literally relationships, but not just human ones. Our relationships with everything, how you experience the color green, how you experience the smell of garlic, you know, how you experience light from a star versus a match. You know, there's information wrapped up in all of that. So if anything, this class, hopefully, in hearing each other's stories too, you're starting to see there's so many different ways that we build perspectives. And those perspectives, though, and you're right, Al, you know, many of us go through periods of bitter resentment with religion and thing, and I'm with you too. Christianity, I'm proud to say, is part of my lineage. I've learned so much and continue to learn so much from that religion, both the Catholic varieties and other varieties. And then there's real energy in there, right? It's not just these stories, there were people behind them, and there's real energy in the entities of Jesus, Mary, the saints. It's all available to you. You don't have to embrace it. You can go to the, Hindu tradition, and there's thousands of gods you can relate to and connect with, and anything that helps to deepen your connection to what is in your life is going to be useful and welcome in a shamanic school. There's no dogma here. You can bring in any entity, anything you like, because like I said, none of them are bigger than you anyway. It's more like show and tell here. You're okay. And we're not afraid. We're not afraid of your demons. We're not afraid of your angels. We're not afraid of any of it. Bring it in. Because we create a sanctuary for this. That's another thing kindergarten is. Boy, you drop your kids off at kindergarten, well, maybe present time excluded somewhat, but you assume they're safe, right? It's a safe place to learn. Kindergarten is that too. You could bring anything to the school, anything that you are, bring it here. We're good. And we'll look at the energy of it. So I know this is a lot for us to listen to each other's stories. Hopefully you're finding it enriching. But I want to move on to Brenda. Brenda is here. She's going to assist with teaching. And Brenda, go ahead. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what brought you to the Audacious Spirit?
Good morning. Let's see. I have a similar lineage background as Richard, although I was in an offshoot of the Berkeley Psychic Institute. I started taking, in those days, it was called Meditation 1, way back in I think it was 1986 or so. And it was here in Portland. It was an offshoot called the Washington Psychic Institute. The mother school was in Washington, Everett, and we also had the Church of Divine Man. So I began my journey there. I was raised Presbyterian, went to church, counseled at church camp, had really great information and foundation. But at some point realized there was things missing or things that didn't add up for me. I don't know, it's been so long ago since I did my basic class. It's difficult to remember exactly why, but I found the school. I went through all the programming. Whoops. I went through all the courses. I did meditation. I did the healing class. I did at that time in that school, it was called the seminary program, which was the clairvoyant program. And I was ordained as a minister of the Church of Divine Man in 1988, I believe. And I did some practice, and then I kind of just lived my life. I had my own business. I always trusted that, the universe, myself, whatever, was going to take care of me. And it always did. It always worked out. I landed on my feet, more or less, and journeyed through almost 4 years ago, 2019. I had a coworker who I was really struggling with, and I realized that it was largely energetic. And then I kind of had this thing like, oh wait, I know how to take care of that. So I searched around to get a reading. I wanted a psychic reading, and I found the Audacious Spirit that said they were a rose-based clairvoyant school, which is the basis for our whole lineage, is a rose-based program, which you'll learn about soon. And so I got a reading, and it was awesome. And it reminded me how much I loved reading and how much I'd missed it, and how it was really ready to come back to that part of my journey and open up a practice for myself and really connect. So I'm eternally grateful for Richard for acknowledging that I had the training I had, even though it was from before, a long time back. And I began reading with the school, doing student readings, I guess. the Monday night readings. And so for the last almost 4 years, 3.5 years, I've pretty much read every Monday night with the school, sometimes Wednesday with the healing circle. And then 2 years ago, I started and I did the shamanic ministry and teaching program. So I expanded what I knew, I practiced more, I learned more. And now I'm in the process of creating and building my own private practice with having clients and reading. So I'm connecting with the school on that level and branching out and doing some stuff, and eventually would love to get a class, start teaching this class. So I'm kind of hanging out, taking notes, learning how to do this, observing Richard, helping him. And I'm excited. I'm going to do my best to make all the Saturday classes. It's a good time for me. So thank you, whoever needed this time. Yeah, and currently I had my own business. I then got married. I had some kids. My business didn't really fit with that. It didn't fit me anymore. So I eventually found my way to working in education, and I now work in education. I'm a library assistant for Portland Public Schools. I actually work a lot with kindergartners, so it's always really fun to hear Richard talk about kindergarten and in my mind relate it to actual little 5-year-olds. They're this lessons all on their own in so many ways. Anyway, so I'm here and I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. I want to remind you, Brenda, you said eternally grateful. Hold on one second.
There is an expiration date on that.
Okay, if you insist.
My eternity is just this life. No, I'm eternally grateful to you. Richard has graced my family and home with his presence the last few days. He's currently hanging out in Seaside, Oregon. But the last few days he came over to Portland, he and his cats, and they've moved into my daughter's room. So he was here for the holiday and we've been having a jolly time. Hitting Black Friday sales, etc.
Can you say happy Black Friday as a well wish? I think you can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think we did.
Yeah. Also have a little bit of a cold and hangover. Just FYI. So that's the reality of starting class after a holiday.
It's the holidays. Hangovers are fine.
Yeah. Thank you, Brenda. So now my turn, and I'm gonna shorten this because I have been known to go way too far. But I don't think I need to. You guys are so varied, and I love that we're all still in common at the same time. And so I'm going to try and, rather than kind of tell you some of the more freakish shit that's gone on in my life, but I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, I was actually given that feedback that I scare people sometimes when I talk about this. But again, nothing's bigger than you, nothing to be afraid of. So where did this begin? Again, I already told you, grew up in Western Pennsylvania, blue collar town, gay kid, well, had its own set of fun with that. But I was raised Catholic, and I had a genuine love for religion. Just when I was, I can't reflect, when I was the actual kid that I was, I didn't think I was different or unusual like most kids. But I always liked going to church, and I wanted to go to church, and I'd walk to church all on my own. Even my mom and dad didn't want to go. I'd like to go and sit there. And I just thought, well, it seemed to me, even as a little kid, that this was more important than anything, especially if you believe what they're telling you. You're going to go to heaven, you're going to go to hell. Why would I go to heaven, right? So you got to do all this stuff. And is this where you want to be? Yeah, so it made sense to me. But throughout my life, I've had, and I've only really, in retrospect, been able to share these stories, but ever since I was little, I've had unusual things go on in my life. So, and I'm just going to summarize by telling you this. Sometimes, and this is a belief, so I'm not programming you, but I'm sharing a belief with you. I think that when we're born, we're still not yet fully programmed by people. I mean, we're kind of born, the Latin term is tabula rasa, empty slate. Well, it's not totally true. You got all kinds of genetic information that's just, champing at the bit to express. But, your life really does begin wherever your consciousness awakens in this world. And mine awakened in the womb. I remember it. And again, there's unusual weirdness, number one, but I'm not alone. There are others that have had that experience. What I remember from my experience of showing up, as a fetus in my mother's womb was how much my mother did not want to have a kid. And I remember that. There's 8 years between me, and I have 3 brothers, all older, and 8 years, 11 years, 12 years. And my mom and dad only really wanted to keep, having me, because back then the Catholic Church was curiously had no problem with abortion. And they only did that later when they needed money. But they both decided that I had to be a girl statistically, and they wanted a girl more than anything because they had 3 boys and they thought boys were a pain in the ass and, all kinds of trouble. So I recall my experience in the womb feeling pretty bad, quite depressed, not happy, because my mother was depressed and not happy. And I actually think that had a lot to do with why I was born into the world with kind of amped up spiritual abilities, because I wanted to escape that womb so bad. I literally would project my awareness outside of it. And I could see the world, even though I was inside this, basically cellular kind of prison. And I do remember seeing things like kind of through a haze, but seeing them nonetheless. I remember being born. I remember being joyous and happy about it. I remember like wanting to wave and say hello to people. I remember being able to communicate in what seemed to me like English. And I didn't actually speak words, but I was like, why can't they hear me? I'm talking to these doctors and shit. And then I remember taking my first breath, and it's like some reset button got pushed. All that joy, all that like absolute unbridled enthusiasm went into this kind of gray staticky energy. And then I had spotty memories after that. I remember being on a carpet with my face jammed in, and like adults standing around me, looking at me like I was a toy, and feeling gravity and hating gravity, hating the feeling of the texture on my skin. I remember stuff from babyhood and stuff. So it went on after that. And again, I didn't think that was unusual. I just assumed everybody was like that. And I was actually a really happy, like full of joy kid. And so I had unusual experiences, which I'm not going to get fully into, but let's just say I learned that I could make myself invisible. I could see entities and things that other people couldn't see. And I thought it was all cool and hysterical. And it all made me laugh, all of it. And it seemed to me everything had this common denominator of what I call joy. And I used to have these kind of experiences of joy as a child that always coincided with supernatural events. No, I didn't think them supernatural. I just thought they were funny, like my dad, I hated it when my dad went to work because I wanted him to stay home and play with me every day. And, obviously couldn't do it. And, I'd like hold on to his leg like little kids do, and he'd walk while I was clung to his leg. And that was a fun little game. And one day he was going to work, and we parked we had a car in this driveway that was super steep. It was like a 45-degree angle. And he got in the car, and, this was like 1967, well, sooner than that, 66, maybe. I was 4. And I thought, I'm going to play a joke on him. I'm going to lay behind the tires like I'd seen Dudley Do-Right, the cartoon, and stuff. So I laid down under the back tire, and I could see him in the rearview mirror. And I thought he saw me and he was in on the joke. So he took the car out of park, and I got so excited because it's like, oh, we're going to play. This is going to be a great joke. And he backs the car right over me, my whole body, just boom, and the second I saw that tire move, I filled up with this joy. And it was like, I call it a joygasm, because I literally like went, "Ah." I was like so happy. And the wheel just went right through my body, and it didn't cause any harm at all. And it left a tire print on my shirt. My dad, and when it happened, I was like laying there like, ah. I was in total ecstasy, and he thought he killed me. So he gets out of the car and he's screaming and screaming, Ricky, Ricky, and he grabs me and he's like shaking me. Oh my God, breathe, breathe. And I just started laughing. And he was like, I'll never forget the look in his face. It's burned into my brain to this day. It was this look of shock and anger that I was fine. Like I was playing a trick on him that he didn't understand. Then he started slapping me and beating me and putting me to bed and all this stuff. So I had that experience. And I know they kept the shirt, by the way. They put it in a drawer because it had the thing. And I remember them calling the priest and asking them about it. And I thought, the priest was an idiot. I don't know what he said, if anything. But again, they were looking at me like I remember that from being a baby, like these giants staring at me like there's something weird about me. And so those were some of the more joyful, kind of cool aspects of kind of having spiritual abilities that you don't even know you have. And the truth is, we all have that. We all came from energy, pure energy, disembodied soul, and the fact that like that was more available when I was a kid also isn't unusual. That's true for a lot of children. We start the programming of children pretty young to just do the human common denominator, fit in, conform. I mean, we go to 12 years of like mandatory education for that reason. We want people to kind of homogenize into a culture, into a society, and things like that. So we tend to trim off the excess. And, I was just full of excess, the way I was born. There's a lot more I could tell you about my childhood, but why am I sitting here today? Because of that? No, I didn't even put that shit together until the real whopper of an experience happened. And this happened, I went to a Catholic high school because I thought, I'd be escaping a certain kind of oppression I was getting in public schools because I was effeminate and, I was being tormented regularly. And though I handled it, I still didn't like it. And I thought I'll go to this small private school where bullies won't be able to get to me and blah, blah, blah. It was a mistake. The school wasn't like that. It was worse in many ways, but I did go to this school. And it was kind of from the kettle into the frying pan. It was worse in many ways. And, these were Franciscan friars that taught the school, and they have their own set of kind of quirks and problems that they love to take out on kids. And they did. And basically, they tried to cure me of my homosexuality by giving me pornography and a masturbation schedule. And I had to check in with the school psychologist to see how my conversion therapy was going. And, it went on like that. Yet they thought that I was this brilliant religious student, and they were trying to, get me to join one of their priesthoods. And, all this stuff was going on. And ultimately, what happened culminated around the graduation, my high school graduation. And this is the story I want to tell you, because this is what really launched me into finding the Berkeley Psychic Institute. On graduation day, I was a very good student. And then because my sexuality was emerging and because they were putting me through conversion therapy and all this crazy shit, I had a kind of uneven experience of my own happiness in life. So I tended to like fall into some pretty deep depressions, and I was still getting bullied by people. And so it was difficult to say the least, but I had really excellent academic career. I always wanted to be of service. I volunteered for everything. I did wonderful things for charitable organizations, even as a teenager. I mean, I was super dedicated to doing stuff, good works, because I believed in Jesus. I believed in his example. Got a little emotional saying that. Anyway, Jesus was important to me, I'll tell you. Still is. And just to talk a little bit about that, I mean, one of the most powerful dreams I had as a kid was Jesus taking me. I was playing on a hillside, and I was playing with all my friends, and Jesus showed up, and he took me and he laid me down on some grass and had me look up at the sky. And there was this big fireworks display going on up in the cosmos. And I remember thinking, oh, that was so beautiful. And I'm like, I want my friends to come check this out. And he's like, oh, no. This is for you. This is just for you. And I remember how sad that made me feel at the time. I didn't really want it to be just about me. I wanted my friends. I wanted everybody involved in this. This is joyful. What do you mean it's just me? And I'll never forget that dream because of that. But, I got to say, in retrospect, I had that dream when I was like 4 or 5 years old. It was rather prophetic. So anyway, graduated from high school, and I had attained a membership in something called the National Honor Society, which for me meant something powerful. It meant that even though I was flawed and had all these problems, somebody recognized that I was special and smart and good. And I did so much to get that membership, that, this kind of enclave of priests who were truly nasty individuals and did terrible things to the students quite often. It was a very racist school. They would intervene in people's lives if they saw some of the students having interracial relationships. They literally would follow them around in cars and try to prevent them from. I mean, these weren't the great people you might think priests should be. And the main priest, Father Kieran Monahan, was an Irish Catholic from Boston who was particularly virulent and really targeted me as someone to suppress and to silence and to marginalize, because I kind of had a clique of people around me that were very creative, and we did theater, and my clique was very popular with the sports clique, and we all hated them, because of the shitty things they did, for real. And so on graduation day, because I was so busy doing a million things, my final quarter of Spanish 5, which was a super advanced level of Spanish, I got a D. And he insisted that I had no right to be in the National Honor Society. And as we were putting on the cap and gown, and I was about to put that special thing on, he took it off and said, sorry, you got a D. You can't wear that. And it sounds petty, but to me at the time, that was it. Because I couldn't fight him. I couldn't have done anything about it because it was graduation day. And I just started to boil up. I'd never been so angry in my fucking life. And I sat there through the ceremony crying, and, it was in a church, and, they're up there praying and talking about this, that, and the other. And I knew their values, and these people had poor values in my view. I mean, they did the best they could with what they knew and had. Okay, yeah. But still, I was furious. And I stood up on graduation day when they called my name to get my diploma. I said, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you to everybody sitting up there. And they were appalled. And the whole audience was like, what's going on? And I said, I'm getting the fuck out of here and I'm never coming back. Fuck all of you. And I walked down the aisle and walked out the door. I've done that in corporations since. Other corporations, I should say. Well, that began a long depression because I had essentially ripped myself out of society and believed I had no value in it. And I stayed in my room and I didn't talk to my friends. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't talk to my parents. I just isolated for days and days and days. And my mother, who was kind of a little torturous person herself, actually felt bad for me and was like trying to kind of get me to go out and do all this stuff. And so she said, well, you know what? You have bad posture, so I'll pay for a chiropractor. Let's go to a chiropractor. And if you stand up straight, you'll feel better about yourself. And I was at this place where I didn't give a fuck what anybody said to me about anything ever again. And it's like I didn't trust anybody or anything about life. So my answer to that, having zero power as like an 18-year-old and having no trust in life, was I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I don't care. I'll do anything. What does it matter? Just let me be your goddamn puppet. I'll do whatever you want. So I went to this chiropractor, and this woman was unusual. She had seen the Pittsburgh Steelers, or I'm sorry, she was the chiropractor for the Pittsburgh Steelers. She had every crazy contraption and device known to man. She was like next level, cutting edge, a little nutty, but an amazing healer. And I went to her and I just laid there depressed. I didn't care. Oh yeah, go ahead. Do this, do that, do that, do that. So she started giving me all these treatments and vitamins and all this stuff. And I had gained some weight, and she's like, well, you know, we're not really going to get very far with your posture until we get that gut off of you. And I'm like, okay, now what? You know, bear urine. What are you going to give me? I mean, she had all kinds of crazy stuff. And she had a friend who was a psychologist who went to see her. And so she said, well, why don't you go see him? He does hypnosis. I'm like, there we go. There's the alternative weirdness. So he was a PhD from Yale. He taught at the University of Pittsburgh, and you know, not a slouch. And so I went to see him. I'm like, anything, I don't care. I'll go. Yeah, let's do that. So I went, and his protocol was to give, you know, psychological testing, do all this stuff. And he did old school hypnosis. Old school means it takes about 2 hours to get you into what they call a trance. And what's interesting about that is I did it, you know, so I sat there and he would basically make these long recordings that went on for 2 hours because that's how long these sessions were. And I mean, there's nothing magical in hypnosis. They just concentrate on your body and you like relax every single body part, you know, like you relax your toes, you relax your feet, you relax your ankles. And it takes 2 hours to get all the way up to your head, you know, and then finally, when you're fully in this deep relaxation state, you know, then the practitioner starts to like give you suggestions and programs. And because it was losing weight, he'd like program me against like eating pie and you know, stuff like that, you know, put pie in your mouth and it has this noxious and vomitous, you know, and they program you to have negative responses to foods and stuff that you can't eat. And it sounds funny, but oh my God, did it work? It worked so well. Weight started pouring off me. And I did this for, he gave me those tapes and I had to get a new tape. Twice a week I went in. And so twice a week with him, I'd get a new tape made and he'd change the suggestions with every tape. Eventually he got me into visualizing my body's organs and stuff, and like altering how my thymus worked, how my thyroid worked. And, you know, he'd give me all these suggestions. And all I could tell you is it worked. It worked very well. But I was an 18-year-old kid, isolated from my friends. I didn't care about anybody anymore. I didn't really want to have friends. I didn't want to know anybody. My friends were freaking out because, you know, graduation parties. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So I was listening to these tapes and going into these long ass trances and losing weight. But one day I was listening to this tape, and this was after a good month. And again, I had lost a lot of weight. I was so bored though, listening to this guy programming me against pie and carbohydrates. And so I just listened to it and I was wide awake and staring at the back of my eyelids. And then, you know, if you scrunch your eyes, you still see kind of the after images of light. Well, I was staring at them like it was a TV show and I was just watching them. And as I was watching them, they started to do stuff like move around. And not random, they started to move in patterns, and the patterns were really pretty. And I remember going, oh, these are such intricate patterns. How cool is that? You know, and they all kind of gathered into this swirl of light. And the next thing you know, I was like going through a tunnel, and there was a white light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember the tunnel. The tunnel was freaky. It seemed to be this tunnel made out of like some kind of viscous goo that was going through like space. You know, like there were stars and things out there. But at the end of this tunnel was white light. And when I looked down kind of at myself, I too was like this little puff of white light. And it's hard to explain. Like I wasn't like Richard going, what is this? I was like, oh, yeah, cool. There were these things outside the tunnel that looked like, they literally looked like blue demons. They had big flappy wings and claws, and they were nasty, terrifying looking things. And they were like trying to like kind of reaching for the goo in the tunnel. But I was like, oh, they can't get to me. You know, I was totally fine. And I felt, I don't think I ever in the life as Richard at that point felt peaceful. And I felt such peace, such ease, and such enthusiasm and normal. Like I felt like my real self. And yet I was just this little puff of light. And as I got to the end of the tunnel, this is so weird. This is where you need to batten the hatches because it gets strange. It's like my vision kind of coalesced, like I was waking up from a dream, and I was right behind this dude who was walking up a short flight of stairs. And it was a black man, blue jacket, medium-sized fro, jeans. Saw him from behind, opened up the door, walks in, and it's like I'm this little entity, like kind of standing on his shoulder or something. I mean, I didn't literally see that, but that was kind of the perspective I had. And he walked in and he was like greeting people. And there was this woman who knew him. I couldn't hear anything, but it was a black woman, and there was a black light on in the bar, and her teeth were all glowy purple. She had on this white dress with fringe, and you could see it was all purpley from the black light. And clearly they knew each other, and they were talking and smiling and laughing. And he walks over to the bar and sits down. And at that point, I can kind of hear a little bit of what's going on in the room. He's talking to the bartender. It sounds all muffled and weird. And then he ordered a beer, and he had his hands on the beer. And then I could feel his hands on the beer. I could feel the cold and the wet. And then he drank some, and I can kind of taste it. And I could hear the room. And at that point, somebody in the back of the room, there were pool tables back there, called, I don't remember his name, but called him out. And he went back there. And this guy was pointing down this short little flight of stairs that had these light bulbs over it. And he walked down the stairs, and there were doors in this hallway. And as he was walking through the hallway, somebody came out of one of the doors. And as he turned around to see who it was, he saw a baseball bat heading right for his head. And he clearly got mugged or jumped and hit in the head with this baseball bat. And in the second that happened, I was back in my room, only I wasn't lying on the bed listening to the tape anymore. I was on the floor, and I was soaking wet down to my underwear, and I could not breathe. I had no awareness of this at all. And I was like, it was like that. And like my body was all tetanied from hyperventilation. If you've ever heard somebody dying and they go into what they call a death rattle, that's what it was. It was like that. If you've ever seen that. And it was the strangest fucking thing on earth. I'm lying on the carpet, like trying to breathe, I felt this horrible pain in my chest. I mean, like an elephant was sitting on it, and I could barely move. And all I wanted was to be able to breathe. And as I did kind of catch my breath, here's more weird stuff. Everything in my bedroom had gone nuts. Like the drawers in the bureau were opening and closing by themselves. I had these cabinet doors that were made of metal, and they were opening and closing, making a like crazy loud noise, bang, 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 bang. The door to my bedroom was opening and closing by itself. I had this big heavy ass window that was opening and closing by itself. I had a Mickey Mouse phone, which was pre-Bell breakup, by the way, dear to my heart. And I had it, and it was ringing solid, nonstop, like not like ring, ring, just like ring. It was the craziest thing. Pictures flew off the wall, like all this like poltergeist activity, poltergeist. I mean, there wasn't a poltergeist. I don't know. I think what happened, I'll give you the interpretation later, but this is what went on. And because I was a kid and the phone rang, like some part of me said, you have to answer the phone. So I up there, I grabbed the phone, and I'm like, oh, I couldn't speak. And there was some dude on there yelling at me in Spanish. And I'm like, I got a D in Spanish 5. Please speak English. No, I didn't say that, but it was like, I didn't understand him, but he was yelling at me urgently, urgent, bah, 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 bah. And I'm like, I don't understand. And so I just dropped the phone, and I managed to like crawl back onto the bed, and I just laid there thinking, what the fuck is this? And my mother the laundry room was right under my bedroom, and she was down there yelling, all my kids are crazy. What are you doing up there? It sounds like you're tearing the house apart and blah, blah, blah. I was like, that wasn't tearing the house apart. Again, just chalk it up, another weirdo experience. But I hadn't had something that crazy since I was, got run over by the car when I was a kid. And, well, what do you say? All I could tell you is I got my breath back, and my chest hurt for days. I think I literally died. I think I willed myself to death. And this was a kind of near-death experience where I left my body fully, and I didn't know I could do that. I didn't even believe such things were possible, but I did it. And I went into that other guy's body. When I came back, this is what happened. I only came back because he got killed. And so after that, this is when the real weirdness started. I'll just say it like this. I wasn't alone. When I came back into my body, it wasn't just me. How do I know that? Because then these dreams started up, and I had these really dark, horrific dreams where people were being pulled limb from limb.
And boyfriend thing.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and mute, Wally. It's okay. Thank you. And so I had these terrible dreams. I also had, everything you call psychic abilities went off the charts. I could bump into somebody and I could tell you absolutely every detail about their lives, but I was seeing everything through a really super negative lens, like I was getting things like what it took someone to go through like their worst moments, and like how exhausted they were all the time. And so I was like seeing everything about people, experiencing everything about people, but through their worst side, their darkest selves. And it was all pouring into me, and I couldn't control it. I had no ability to say, oh, please, I don't want this. And it was overwhelming. So again, it increased my isolation because I couldn't go out around people, because just bumping into them became this like, oh my God, please stop, And plus I was young. I didn't know what the fuck was happening. And ultimately, it was clear, because a year later, after torment, that some of it was actually kind of funny, but I will tell you, my sober assessment is this was a demonic possession. And why a demonic possession? Do I even believe in demons? Yes, I do. But What are they? Well, that's evolved over the years. So it took me about a year, and I had had enough of this insanity. I could tell you stories of the shit that went down in that year that were just mischievous, ridiculous. Their ability to alter what you think you see and hear, and literally to make changes in the physical world because they were anchored to me. They could like make TV sets blow up, screw up shit, change weather. I'm not kidding you. They could do all kinds of amazing things through me. And I discovered some of this because I just would know. I'd be like, I don't want it to rain Saturday. And I'd get this like giggling. I could hear it inside. And they're like, well, make it a nice day. So I actually tried. And I'm like, all right, boom, boom, boom. I put my hands up. I didn't know what I was doing. Put my left hand on the back of my neck, put my right hand up to the sky. And suddenly it was like I could see this weather map of the whole nation. I could see like low pressure systems, high pressure systems. And I'd be like, well, I know the nice weather comes with the high pressure. So I'd grab it and I'd go, come over here. And I swear to God, it sounds outlandish, but it worked. I'll never forget Bob Kudzma, Channel 2 weather, Pittsburgh. It's going to be a sunny day, Boom, made it pour, and he was like, sometimes shit happens. We don't know why, blah, blah, blah. Literally, he said that. I could pick the lottery number every single day. They would do it on television, and I'd be sitting there with my family while they're drawing the numbers, and I'd be like 6. They'd go 6, 12, 12, 18, 18. And, my family, rather than going, that's amazing, they'd be like, you asshole, why don't you go buy a goddamn ticket? And it's like, I could never get that in time to buy a ticket. It only happened right before they drew it. Call that a torment. I think it is tormenting, but I could do that, but I could never get a ticket and win. A year later, I had had enough. And my parents had this lake home, and crazy shit was going up there all the time. And I just want you to know, it wasn't just noticed by me. It wasn't like I was the only one that saw or felt or thought these things. My friends would be like, how did that just happen? So they knew that this was real. I showed them the weather thing, and it scared the fuck out of a lot of my friends. Other ones were like, that's really cool. You could do that. So after a year, I had had enough, and I couldn't sleep. Sleeping was always a challenge because of the dreams and all this stuff that would come. And I was lying down on the couch in our living room upstairs, and I was just staring up at the ceiling thinking, my life is insane. And it just seemed all hilarious to me in that moment. And this hilarity kind of poured out of my heart like a cornucopia. That joy energy that I told you about, I had since childhood, it came out. And I just thought, this is hysterical what's been going on for a whole year. I've had all these crazy paranormal things. I have no answers as to why. My whole family thinks I'm nuts. And, it's hysterical. And I thought it was so funny. In that instant, the room lit up with these little orbs of green light, hundreds of them. And they boom, they were there still. And then they started to move like in this slow circular thing. They formed into one big ball, flew out the window, smashed into a tree. The tree blew up in sparks. The tree died, by the way, like within a year after that. But as it went through the window, as it touched physical matter, all the same shit that happened in the house when they came into me happened. The cabinets were opening and closing. The vents in the wall were like going bang, bang, bang. All this banging and shit was going on. And again, my mother in the bedroom is yelling at me, what are you doing out there? It's 3:00 in the morning, you fucking asshole. Same thing. So as weird as they came in, they went out, and it was over. So sorry for the long story, but I want you to know why I went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute. So I was still living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time. And then things started to change. Like I got offered a position up in Boston, Massachusetts, because I worked for a bank at the time. And I decided to go. A, I wanted to keep the job. B, the boss that I had here, who I really liked, was going to be my boss up there. So I'm like, it's an adventure. I'm going to go. So I moved to Massachusetts, and that caused all kinds of drama. It was the first time I actually spoke to God when I was in Massachusetts. And I never believed I could do that. I was kind of an atheist at the time, just to protect myself, because I didn't trust religion. So when God answered me, when I asked her a question, she spoke to me in a female voice and told me, you need to go. There's people up here you need to meet. I want you to do a couple of things. And then when it's done, it's all about you. And I got to tell you, everything she said to me in that hotel room that night, I was bawling my eyes out about my life because it was so crazy, happened. I met a couple of people. I know I had profound effects on their life. One of them was a female that I actually fell in love with as a gay man. That was a first. And, but that's what I think I was mainly meant to do. And after that relationship had kind of reached its zenith, I kind of knew that this was it. And within a week, I got a job offer in California. I was being poached because I had a certain kind of systems expertise. So I took the job. My girlfriend at the time was sad about it and blah, blah, blah. But she was like, I understand you have to do this, blah, blah, blah. And I did. So I moved to California, and I moved to Sacramento. And that's where I had to go to laundromats and stuff. And the Berkeley Psychic Institute had a magazine called The Psychic Reader that they would publish and put for free out in laundromats and places. And so I would sit there and read this Psychic Reader, and while I was doing laundry. And that's where I came across the creed of the Church of Divine Man. And again, I was an atheist at the time. I didn't trust psychics or anything, any religious organization. But there was something about the way that creed was written that really resonated with me, and I'll read it to you later. But I thought, well, I'm going to go because I still have this lingering question about what happened to me. What was that? So I went, and I decided to do their training, and the rest is history. I did get some answers as to what went on, but ultimately I had to come up fully with those answers. It wasn't like some psychic told me. They did help me understand what kicked them out, and they were correct about that. It was amusement. I told you, amusement is the most powerful tool you're ever going to learn. The fact that I could find hilarity in all that depossessed me quite literally of probably 100 at least entities that were participating in Richard. And so I say depossessed, it's a real word. And yeah, I kicked them out. But that's who I am. That's what took me to the Berkeley Psychic Institute. And that's what got me started on this path and learning this lineage. Now, I was there for years, and I learned everything they had to teach. And then I became a teacher there. And then I went from teaching to being a director of the school, of the main school, the flagship school, the Berkeley School in Berkeley. So I had several years teaching online and starting the online teaching up there and guiding students many years through this training. And then the church kind of went crazy. And I don't want to get into all the personal details about that, but the head of the church, Susan Boswick, her husband, Lewis, who founded it, had passed away, and she took over, and she had a lot of unresolved stuff about being a woman in the world and powerless. So she became a power-seeking maniac. Is part of her resolution. And so she guided the institution poorly, in my view, and she nearly drove it to bankruptcy. And all kinds of stuff happened there where, I did succeed at kind of intervening and bringing life back into it and stuff like that. And then she started to treat me like I was some piece of shit and she wasn't. And that's it. You know, she would present with me, you know, she wanted me to kiss the ring. And, you know, it was like, you're not a pope. You know, what are you trying to do? And so it just became a very unlevel playing field. And I couldn't pretend otherwise. And that's why I talked to you about the level playing field. So I left that and I co-founded another school with a former bishop of that church, Carmen Figueres, called Spirit is Calling. And that was another school that started up in Berkeley that I co-founded and got set up. But Carmen was also a product of this kind of down with the patriarchy energy. And ultimately, she started to marginalize me too. And that was like really difficult. So I'm like, I think I just need to do my own. So I started the Audacious Spirit. And that was back in 2013. I moved from California to Florida. My parents were elderly and needed a caretaker, and it just worked out. So I went and lived with them and started the school. But that's who I am, and so much more, as you are all so much more than you said. Any questions for me, anything at all? Because we're going to take a little break, and then we're actually going to do some tools. And I'm going to talk to you about energy. Any questions, anything come up for you while I was talking? Anything you want to ask each other, by the way, say hello to each other. Feel free.
No.
Is anybody shocked and appalled that your teacher was formerly possessed?
I love it, Richard.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I have had students get really upset about that. It's like,
I think it's intriguing.
yeah, you're going to get real comfortable with the, I mean, look, how much bacteria do you have in your body? Do you feel possessed? You know, I mean, all kinds of things participate in your life, you know, things with bodies and things without. So that got in a highly unusual circumstance and went out in the same kind of thing. And ultimately, it was probably meant to be, if there is such a thing as meant to be. But let's go ahead and thank you for the introductions. Thank you for your frankness. Thank you for your open-hearted, open-minded hellos to each other and to me.
Can
But
I
let's
ask
take 5.
Owl a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
When's your birthday?
Pardon me?
When is Owl's birthday?
Owl, when's your birthday? You want to share?
July 3rd, 1990.
July 3rd.
Oh,
Interesting. Okay.
what a baby.
Too young for you, Wally. Just stop.
No, it's just because like it seems like we have 3 Torians in this room,
I know, it's
born
shocking.
within a day of one another. My birthday's the 12th, and I believe it was funny when I first heard Robin's came in. I had this, I just literally saw an image of a twin, and she's born on the 11th. I'm born on the 12th. So I just had this
Wow.
like unusual twinning image. It was kind of bizarre.
Already
I'm on the
working it,
15th of
Wally.
May.
Hello.
Oscar's the
Oscar,
13th.
when were you born?
The
You said
13th of May.
Oh,
So 11,
dear.
12, 13.
That's okay. I felt that.
Wow.
That's, yeah.
My mother was a
Taurus.
Taurian, and I'm a Taurus rising, if that matters. But I'm a
Yeah,
Leo.
wow. I think I see 3 people dancing in a circle, joining hands. So that's kind of strange. We're all brothers and sisters here.
Absolutely. Awesomeness. All right, let's take 5 minutes or so. I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to go to the bathroom.